Okay,
All
good.
right, let's start. Well, welcome back. We get actually today a view of the global aluminum industry from one of our own, from an FAU graduate. We have Robert Fink Jr. as our guest tonight. He's the partner and vice president of operations for Containers Direct LLC. He's got 25 years of experience in the import and export of semi-fabricated aluminum products. He was born in Salem, Ohio, traveled a lot, has been to Youngstown State University in Ohio, Purdue University, and ended up at Florida Atlantic University and graduated from us with a BA in International Business in 1994. Currently, he's doing business with Belgium, Germany, Bahrain, Russia, China, Mexico, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Vietnam. And he's initiating ties with Korea, Thailand, and Taiwan for 2016. So he has four children, and I look forward to hearing from him. So give him a round of applause, please.
Testing. Can you hear me okay? Is this working? All right, great. Great. First, I'd like to just thank Dr. Gropper for inviting me to come and speak with all of you. His assistants, Caitlin Hall and Karina Lewis-Welsh. They helped me coordinate this over the last few months. I've been by the campus over the past 20 years, but really hadn't gotten into the campus, and wow, I mean, there's got to be triple the buildings here since I was here. There's probably, the stadium is amazing, and so you're very blessed to have this opportunity to be able to go to a campus like this. And so I got a quick question for you though. This goes back to my roots here at FAU. How many of you know how FAU got the owl as the mascot? They were burrowing owls. They were all over the property. And when they developed the campus, and then if you look back at the mascots, you'll see that the mascot used to be this really fragile looking bird, and now it's turned into this vulture. But I like it. I like it. So, but my partner, Tim O'Connor, is he graduated from FAU in 1976, and his wife, Linda, graduated in 1977. Tim built a $300 million aluminum distribution business here in Florida, sold it about 8 years ago and retired. And so Tim bought a foursome to an FAU golf tournament here a few months ago and couldn't play, so he asked me to play. I got paired up with Dr. Gropper, and after he realized that I wasn't a golfer, he asked me what I did. And so as we got into the conversation, he said, "You need to come speak with my business students." So here I am. And so I'm going to take you on, it's been a really cool trip. The trip continues. I've been blessed to have traveled all over the world since leaving FAU. And so if I can do anything today, is to inspire you to maybe do the same, because the world's amazing. It's absolutely amazing, and it's within reach for anybody that wants to do it. So let's get started. That's me. My 50th birthday, I did 8 laps on Daytona. I accomplished 150 miles an hour. So I like adventure. I like thrills. I'm not a crazy person. I don't go over the edge. I keep it in check. But I find that there's just so much out there, and you need to get out there and really take a look at it, because you only get to go around one time. But if you go to Daytona, you could do more than that. But I was born and raised in Northeast Ohio. My father was the police chief for our hometown. My mother was a domestic engineer. I was one of 4 children. My brothers and sisters all live in Florida now. We're all down in Florida. I don't know how that happened. But this is how the journey started. Yeah. Do I have to point this at anything?
Is it on?
Yeah.
It's on.
What if I hit?
Battery.
What if I hit the?
Yeah, if you hit the arrows.
Arrows would work also.
Old school.
Oh, you gotta freeze.
Here we go.
Oh, okay, let's see.
There we go. There we go.
All right.
Northeast Ohio, 1940s, booming. Youngstown, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, the heart of the steel belt in America. The mills were feeding the military machine. The mills were feeding the infrastructure development in the United States. And this is, I grew up in a suburb from this town. Not in the 40s, but in that town. In the 1970s, because of EPA regulations, river caught on fire, I think twice. You may have heard of that. The Mahoning River caught on fire. Unions, battles with the unions, the economy, imports. Eventually, the mills in Youngstown closed. The mills, they were just not going to put the money into the scrubbers, the things needed to keep the mills open and operating, and so the mills closed. So here I was, young guy, attending Youngstown State University. I'm studying civil engineering, and there's absolutely no opportunities in that region. So off to Chicago. I headed to Chicago in, I guess it would have been in the early 80s. And I was given an opportunity to work for U.S. Steel. This is U.S. Steel Gary Works. At the time, this was the largest steel production facility in the United States. And my job was a clerk between sales and operations. That was my first entry-level job that I had with U.S. Steel. And so I was pulled into their management training program. I then eventually worked my way into outside sales with U.S. Steel. And I attended Purdue Calumet while I was in that region. I was not your typical student. I studied at night. I worked during the day, went to school at night. I see many of you are probably doing the exact same thing. So I found it to be very rewarding. I paid for my own schooling, and it made me study harder, and I think it helped me in the end. So after about 4 years of winters in Chicago, I was all done with that. Northeast Ohio I thought was bad enough, but man, you have not lived until you've lived through a Chicago winter. So I had 4 of them, decided that was too much of that, so it was time for a little Boca. So I don't know if you guys know, that's the Boca Hotel there. So I moved to Florida. It was in the mid-'80s, and I started my education at FAU, studied international business here back in those days. Many of the college professors here at FAU were former or current IBM executives, because IBM had the Southeast Regional Office was located here in Boca before they moved it, I think, to Charlotte or North Carolina. And so we had all of these really fantastic, and in fact, my favorite professor, I understand, is still here, and you may know him, Dr. K. He was the guy, to be honest with you, he opened my eyes up to the world. He told me stories about stuff he did with IBM, and I thought, man, that's the way to live. That is the way to go. So I questioned him on a test one day, and I found out you don't do that, though. All right, so after we got past that, I ended up graduating in 1994 with a Bachelor in Business Administration and majored in international business. While I was here, I worked for a company called Eastern Metal Supply. Eastern Metal Supply was a wholesale distributor of aluminum extrusions. You're saying, what is an aluminum extrusion? I'm going to get into a little bit more detail on that in a minute. These are aluminum extrusions, and I'll pass, I don't know if I want to pass it around, but afterwards, if you'd like to take a look at that and get a better idea of what I'm talking about when I say aluminum extrusions. So at Eastern Metal Supply, I was fortunate. I got into sales management with them, product management. While I was in product management, one of my jobs was to purchase and develop a new program for them. They only did extrusions, and that's basically shapes out of aluminum. And I had, with U.S. Steel, a background in rolled products. So rolled products, I'm going to get into in a moment a little bit about how those two products, without not a lot of detail. I don't want to bore you with the details on it, but in the 7 years I was with Eastern Metal Supply, we were able to grow the company from $6 million a year to $120 million a year. So it was a very, very successful run with Eastern Metal Supply. And then I was recruited by the Dutch aluminum company Hoogovens. But before I go there, I want to go into just a little bit about these products. Aluminum is the result of bauxite being mined out of the ground, purified into, separated the alumina out of the bauxite. The bauxite is then put into these huge vats that have electrodes that go into them. And through the electrolytic conversion process, it liquefies the aluminum, and then the aluminum is poured into a first stage of product, and that we call ingot. From ingot then, we then create billet, which makes shapes, and this is an extrusion press. If you see the, I think I have, where you see that ram that comes out right there, think of Play-Doh. You know how you had the Play-Doh press, and you put the Play-Doh in there and you squeeze it and out would come the star? That's the aluminum extrusion process, simplified. So you can make any shape that you want out of aluminum. You can see there's just these type of, I brought a couple of these with me this evening. This is a really cool shape. I have a customer in Georgia that what they manufacture is a roof system, and that these are probably about 15 to 20 feet long, and they have mounts on either end of them, on either end. And then if you want your deck to be open when it's sunny and beautiful, you open it up like that, and you shut it like that, and you can actually hold snow on top of these. So it's just one of the areas. This little shape here, you guys probably recognize this from being from South Florida. Anyone? Not fence, but it's for the pool cage. These grooves hold the screen in, these are the uprights, and then the screen comes off of this. This is our #1 business that we deal with here in Florida. This is my partner Tim that I mentioned a moment ago. He built a $300 million company out of this. And so he's relaxing now in the Carolinas. So, but the other side of the coin is slab. They take the ingot and then they add alloying agents to it and create these large slabs of aluminum. These large slabs then are put on in a rolling mill. Now this is a steel mill because I found it to be a little bit more graphic than an aluminum mill, because in aluminum it just turns white hot. And in a steel mill it's actually red hot when they go. What happens is these rollers that you see right here, I think I have a little pointer in here. Let's see. Too small. These rollers that you see right here, those are what you see inside of each of those housing units. And what happens is those rollers then are, with each pass that you run that plate through, they squeeze those rollers up a little bit more. So when it comes through on this side, they bring them down a little, and so that is how a plate is rolled out. Or if you go to a coil and sheet products, it goes into another mill and it gets reduced down to an even smaller. You have a pointer?
Yes, this is a gift from a temporary gift from a student.
Oh, excellent, thank you. And where is it, on the top of here? Or you mean as far as the
red one.
Ah, thank you. So yes, this housing right here, these units right here, these rollers are getting ready to go back in there. They replace them after so many hours of production because they get worn, the heat that comes off of these. So, but that is how you make an aluminum plate. This plate right here is actually a plate, an aerospace plate that we produced in Russia, and this was used for seating components on aircraft. And so just give you a little idea of what is the aluminum, what are some of the aluminum products that we've been working with. As I had said, I was with Eastern Metal Supply for about 8 years. We had a very, very good run, and while I was working for them, I had a Dutch aluminum company approached me and asked me if I would be their Southeast Regional Manager. So the company was Hoogovens Aluminum, and Hoogovens Aluminum asked me to relocate to Orlando and head up their Southeast Regional District for their products that were produced in Germany, and I'll show you that plant in a month. But before I go there, I thought I would tell you a little bit about how are the prices set in the world aluminum market. This is the London Metal Exchange. The London Metal Exchange is a ring. You can see here, you have gentlemen that are sitting on these couches. On one side of the couches are the buyers, and on the other side of the couches are the sellers. So in the morning, the buyers come in. They have two sessions, two ring sessions in the London Metal Exchange. The morning, they'll set a morning price. It takes 15 minutes. They go out, drink tea, come back for the afternoon, and the buyers come back and tell them what they'll pay. So it's not a true supply and demand. It's worked for 150 years, but it's not like a true market enterprise. It is very old boys or old school, old boy network. And so it is, I've been there, I've been to the trading floor, I've watched the activity. It reminded me a little bit about the Chicago Board of Trade and how you would get the commodity traders and how they would go after each other in the pits. And so the LME, if you're ever interested in looking at it, you can go to lme.com. It sets the base metal prices for ferrous metals, which is steel, sets non-ferrous prices for aluminum, copper, tin, nickel, zinc, lead, and also some precious metals. It's not the largest precious metals market in the world, but they do set prices for gold, silver, and platinum. So it's something I look at every day. I have to know what that aluminum is trading for as I negotiate with my manufacturers as we either set monthly prices or annual contracts. Koblenz, Germany, my first trip overseas. The plant below was a plant that was built by Henry Kaiser, a Kaiser Aluminum of the United States, in the late, I think it was the late 80s. Kaiser Aluminum had gotten in trouble. They had to sell off some of their assets to shore up their domestic business. In doing so, they sold this plant for 30 cents on the dollar. The Dutch company bought it, paid it off within 5 years of buying it. It produced the finest aluminum aircraft alloy plate in the world. And so that was my products that I worked with here in the Southeast US. My first major project with Hugovens was the Gulfstream Aerospace Company out of Savannah, Georgia. Gulfstream wanted to develop a jet that would go New York, Tokyo nonstop. The G4 couldn't do it. The only way we were going to be able to do this was to put a bigger wing on this plane. So what we did is at Hugovens, we developed the plate that was able to develop that wing section. Thus, we were able to go New York, Tokyo nonstop. So it was a great success. It was big kudos for me. It was a very successful project. I was called the day they were getting ready to take this jet. It was the first G5 that was coming off the assembly line. And I'll try to input these little stories in here just to liven it up a little bit. But they called me and said, hey, come over and see this jet. It's getting ready to go to the Paris Air Show, and then it's going to an owner in the Middle East. So I go and I walk into the jet, and I'm just floored. You go in, and all of the wood had inlaid gems. Now, you would think it was just, not real. It was cosmetic gems, just made it look pretty. It was in the burl wood. Go into the bathroom. Looked like a solid bar for the toilet ring was a solid bar of gold, all right? So I walked out and I asked the executive that was taking it to the show, I said, is any of this real? He goes, it's all real. I go, why would they do that? Isn't the goal of an aircraft to reduce the weight of the aircraft? He goes, well, this is a little different. He goes, if there's ever a problem in their home country, if they can get to that jet and get that jet off the tarmac and get it to another place, they just got out of town with $25 million. The jet itself was only worth $12 million at the time. That's how much gold and gems were in this jet. I was amazed. So with my success of the Gulfstream project, I was then relocated to Columbus, Ohio. I was made the Midwest Regional Manager for Hugovens Aluminum. And you probably recognize that. It's Ohio State Stadium. I just shipped my son to there last month. He's starting at Ohio State this semester. They didn't have a Division I lacrosse team here at FAU, so I had to let him go there. So my first project in the Midwest with Hugovens was with the Humvee. They manufactured, some of these stamped parts for the Humvees were manufactured in Indiana, at AM General in Indiana. And they came to us and they said, look, we need a strong lightweight hood for this vehicle. So we took this back to our engineers in Germany, and we came back and we were able to successfully secure the contract for the hood material on that vehicle. So it was very cool to watch these vehicles coming off the line, because back then you didn't see them around town, you didn't see them on the streets, you know, the way they had taken them. But this vehicle was amazing when we actually saw what they were putting into these. The hood itself was aluminum, but it was made of an aluminum that would repel light armor. And so it wasn't on the doors, on the sides of these vehicles, those were armor steel, all right? But on that hood, they wanted a little bit, they needed to save some weight somewhere, and so that's why we put the aluminum on the hood. After the success of this project, Hugovens Aluminum gets bought out by Corus Steel out of England. Corus tells me that I'm now moving to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. When you're from Northeast Ohio and you're a Cleveland Browns fan, you do not move to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. All right? So I interviewed with Coalco International. Coalco International was headquartered in Zug, Switzerland, and all of our production was in Russia. So I'm off to New York. I moved to New York, lived just north of Manhattan, up the Hudson River in a little town called Hastings-on-Hudson. The nicest commute I've ever had in my life. I would get on my train in Hastings-on-Hudson. I would arrive in Grand Central in 20 minutes, have my coffee done and my paper read, and walk to my office 2 blocks away. So I really, to a guy from a small Midwestern town in Ohio to have actually arrived in New York, it's a little intimidating, but I found it to be just wonderful. And so I was off to Moscow. All of our sales management and production management, the production management was in Moscow. All of our business management was in Zug, Switzerland. And Zug is just south of Zurich, and it's storybook. You think you could eat the buildings. It's so beautiful. It's just one of the beautiful places in the world. So here I found myself standing in Red Square looking at St. Basil's Cathedral. I've got the Kremlin over here, and I'm buying my cheap imitation army watches over here that I'm bringing back to all my friends in the United States. So when I started with Coalco, I was their national sales manager for U.S. sales. 3 months after I'm with the company, the president of the company is fired, and I'm advised that they are looking for a replacement. So, and this is, if I give you one tip, throw the hat in. I probably didn't have a snowball's chance of getting this job, but I said, I'd like to try that. They gave me a 90-day trial, and within 90 days, I was the president and CEO of Coalco International USA. This was, I'm not positive. I believe that this statue, it wasn't Lenin. Who was the guy before Lenin? Stalin? Not Stalin. Right? I couldn't figure out the thing. They told me back then, that building in the back right there, that our production facility in the Ural Mountains, right next to it was the research facility. And this facility behind this picture right here is where they developed all of their aerospace alloys for their space program and for their military. So what had happened in the Soviet Union, when the fall of the Soviet Union, the workers were given an opportunity to get vouchers. They all became owners of these factories. Well, they didn't want vouchers. They wanted money. So the oligarchs came in. The oligarchs came in and started buying these vouchers up 10 cents on a dollar. So the gentleman I worked for, we'll call him Mr. A. Mr. A bought 5 production facilities in Russia for $30 million. We were in our facility. This was in the Kamensk-Uralsky, the Ural Mountains of Russia. At the end of World War II, when the Americans and Germans entered Germany, the Americans told the Russians, just dismantle this machine and get it out of here. Their whole military complex of manufacturing was to be dismantled. The Russians built railroad tracks to go to the Ural Mountains, where they could hide these things and build factories around them. This press, in the factory in Russia while I was there, they had a picture in the office of Adolf Hitler standing on that railing. He was standing on that railing right there in the picture that they took of him before they moved that press to Kamensky-Uralski. He was making, was at the time the second, it was the largest press in the world when he built it. When I was working there, it was the second largest press in the world. And basically what that is you've got this massive pistons up here, and they drive this thing down, and it takes a shot. And what they were doing is, it's called impact extrusion. The Germans were taking a rod of brass, coming down and hitting it with this ram. The sleeves would shoot up the sides, and this was becoming shells that they were lobbing at London. They were just shooting these things over at London when they were trying to take London down. And so that was where this machine was built. So what do you think we're doing with that machine today? The first shot of that slug of aluminum comes down and forges that wheel. We then take that forged wheel and send it to Hungary, and we had it machined down, and it became these wheels for Alcoa. So it was amazing to actually see. When you stood next to this press, the ground actually shook. When it came down and it did that shot, you were waiting. They had to cut a hole in the roof of the building to get it in there, and it was just it was amazing. It was amazing. So I'll try to, since this is being videoed, I'll try to be brief on this. We were in a merger. Coalco, we were the number 3 aluminum company in Russia. We were buying the number 2 company in Russia. We were going to become the number 1 company in Russia. We owned, of our 5 factories, we had 2 smelters. Those smelters that I said before, where you put the alumina in and you electrolytic convert it, they were 2 of the largest smelters in the world that made first stage aluminum ingot. We were approached to sell those units. Some people in Russia wanted to get involved in the aluminum commodities market. We needed the physical metal that came out of those for our plants. Mr. A had some family members that were kidnapped and murdered. Next thing I know, I'm on a jet to Budapest, and it's announced that we are no longer the managing partner in the merger, and we were being bought now, and that I was now going to be reporting to Moscow. So, no. I had a lot of really good experiences in Russia, but I also had a lot of scary experiences in Russia in the years that I worked with Coalco. So I had a little clause, if I can give you another tidbit of information, write a good contract. I wrote it in my contract that said, if you sell this business while I work for you, you have to pay me a year, and I can leave or stay. And so I left. And I got my salary. I went to Florida, back to Florida, and started my own company, Aluminum Extrusion Supply. And at the time, China was the new producer for aluminum in the world. So I was off to Hong Kong. I used Hong Kong as my launching pad up into China. We developed 2 mills in China for aluminum extrusions. And everything was going really great. And then the Commerce Department stepped in. And the U.S. Commerce Department said, you're selling your extrusions, not to us, but to China. Did I shut that off? Can you hear me? They said to China, you're selling your aluminum too cheap in the United States. We're going to have to hit you with anti-dumping. They put 200% duties on every extrusion that came in and basically shut China down overnight. Now, we had seen this coming. We had heard the rumors that the lawsuit was possible. So one of the best things you can ever do in business is to make sure you are one step ahead of whether it's the government or your competitor. So I had already gone to Mexico when I heard this. I went to Mexico. I visited 6 different aluminum factories. And this was really before it got too crazy with all the stuff that was going on. Most of the stuff in Mexico was up along the Laredo border. It wasn't really down in Monterrey or Veracruz or some of the other cities down throughout Mexico. And so after I had visited 5 or 6 different aluminum factories down in Mexico, I chose Extrusiones Metallicas, and it was because of this port. When you are an export company, if I'm going to build a factory in a country and I want to export my goods to the United States, the first thing I do is I go to the port and I meet with my shipping companies and I find out who does what from here and is that a good port. All right, turned out that's on, if you look at a map of Mexico, it's about 2/3 of the way down on the Gulf side. And the gentleman that built Extrusiones Metallica couldn't have done it any better. He had the perfect logistics for me to develop this business. We were able to reduce our shipping time. We had 34 days to get product from China to the United States. I was now getting product from Mexico to the United States in 7 days. So now I was able to compete directly with the US mills. I had a better price and a better delivery time. So I was a real pain in the ass. That's why the Alcoa guys don't really care for me these days. So we were in Mexico, and we just 2 years of development, and we just couldn't, they couldn't deliver on time. You know, when somebody says to you, no problem, that means he has no idea what you just said, and he has no idea, no plans of ever delivering to you on time. So after frustrating all of my customer base with customers that I had moved down to Mexico to produce their products, it was time to start looking again. So I was off to Indonesia. In Indonesia, you'll look and you'll see, if you look at the island chain in Indonesia, you've got the northern island of Sumatra, you have the southern island of Java, and I forget the name of the one. It's just mountainous. It's really plantations. But Java, Sumatra and Java were the 2 main areas that I looked at. We selected 2 factories that we started to work with, and we were ramping them up. And again, our goal was to get back what we had with China. Because in China, everybody talks about, you know, they just mass produce, their stuff is no good, it breaks. They made the best product in the world. When you're making aluminum extrusion, this looks simple, but it's actually very, very complex to make this shape and other shapes. There's tolerances on here. It can only be so wide. If it's length, it's color, it's paint, everything has got to be right on these because we have to give people 10-year guarantee on this paint. And on this guy here, you know, he wanted a lifetime guarantee on his, which we didn't do. But so we go to Jakarta, and from there we use Jakarta sort of our launching pad. I developed the mills to the east and a mill to the north. We worked with them, but just, again, I was searching for that replacement for China. Their quality was so good. Mexicans couldn't do it. Indonesians couldn't do it. All right, so I'm off again. Malaysia, if you've ever been to Malaysia, this city is one of the most beautiful cities in the whole world. It is so clean, and it is just beautiful. This building is just gorgeous. You've probably seen this. I forget, was it Sean Connery had a movie where he was hanging off this building or something like that? But to physically stand in front of this building is very, very intimidating. It's gorgeous. But in Malaysia, there's no real, their manufacturing in Malaysia of aluminum extrusions, they are so busy in the Pacific Rim building buildings. And so if you can build extrusions, aluminum extrusions, that go on the outsides of these buildings, the aluminum holds the glass onto the building. While you don't see it, you see the glass. Behind that glass is aluminum that's holding on all that glass. It's called glazing. And so the mills in Malaysia were so busy that when they quoted us at 2 or 3 different factories that we had visited, their prices just, I couldn't buy it from them, ship it to the United States, and still make any money. But it was still a beautiful city to visit. Singapore, there's no aluminum production in Singapore. If you see that building, I use Singapore as my launching pad to go now to the rest of the Pacific Rim over in that region, Vietnam, Indonesia. Singapore is, I mean, we all have our top cities. I love Hong Kong, I love New York, I love, you know, but this city right here, you haven't seen a city like this until you've gone over there. You see that building right there? That building right there? If you're standing over on this side of the city and you're looking back at that building, there are 3 high-rises right here. Those are probably about 60 or 70-story high-rises. And across the top of these, they have built a ship. And this is a ship. and you go up there, you can literally stand on the tip of that ship up there and look down over the city. It is just gorgeous. And if you want to go to the Pacific Rim and you want to go to Indonesia or Malaysia, use Singapore as your launching pad. It is just beautiful. It's not crazy. I mean, maybe to live there it might be crazy expensive, but I found it to be, you know, very affordable. I think Hong Kong was probably the craziest when it came to prices when I was traveling. So after we couldn't get it together in Indonesia, it was time to go to Vietnam. And I'm older than most of you. The Vietnam War, I wasn't in the Vietnam War, but it was still a lot of, you know, do I really want to go? And, you know, so I met with my shipping company, Maersk Shipping Lines is who I ship with. And I sat down with their people in New York and I said, look, I'm thinking about going to Vietnam. And do you have any comments on where to go, what to do? They obviously export from Vietnam. So they were able to give me some tips, where to go, where to stay away from. And it's still to today. There's a bit of an attitude in the north, all right? I hope I'm not offending anybody, but there's a little bit of an attitude in the north. The south, wide open, man. They want as much American business as you can give them. So I went down there, and I can say to you today, I found my Chinese replacement. The quality of the products that we are getting out of Vietnam are second to none. We're now just bringing these, our first containers arrived within the last 30 days. Our customers are ecstatic. I'm flying back to Vietnam the 21st of September. We're adding another 300,000 square feet to our existing facility that we have there now. And we look to be able to increase our production by about 10 million pounds a year out of Vietnam. So, but you always want to stay one step ahead. So I found my new mill source in Vietnam. I'm very, very happy with what I've got going on there. But now it's time to, well, before I go, look at that. This is Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. I've never seen so many scooters in my life. I thought Jakarta was the winner. No, Vietnam's got them all. And you would think, in the United States, you'd see people like on the ground, crushed all over the place. Nobody, it's like watching a ballet. It's like a sea of people. As they come through, they're bouncing off of each other, and nobody wrecks. Nobody wrecks. And you'll see entire families on these scooters. You see the little boy hanging on the handlebars. His dad's got him around here. The mom's behind her, and the baby's legs are hanging out the back, and the four of them are just flying down the road in between buses and trucks. It's, you got to see it. I have videoed it. I put one of those pro cams on the top of our car from the airport as I headed back into Ho Chi Minh City. And when I showed it to my friends and family, they were just, it's just, you can't believe it. It's unbelievable. So things are going really, really well for us in Vietnam right now. But like I said, we have to stay ahead of the curve. So next year, I'm planning on going to South Korea. We're looking to develop some business in that region. I'm also hoping to be able to get into Thailand. And we're going to go back to, there's a possibility that in China, the Chinese are sharp people, man. They, when it comes to business, they are really, really shrewd business people. When the Commerce Department came out with that ruling that said you can't ship your aluminum extrusions to the United States, the Commerce Department made a mistake. They said you can't ship extrusions that are made out of 2000 series aluminum or 6000 series aluminum or 7000. They thought they had it covered. Well, there's a 5000 series alloy that wasn't in there because it was always considered a little harder to extrude, harder to push through that Play-Doh press, thus slowing down the process, thus increasing your cost. They figured it out. So they started shipping 5000 series products over here. And these products are like, you ever see the fences that go around people's backyards that look like wrought iron fences? They're actually hollow aluminum fences, all right? Well, those pickets and those channels and those posts can be made out of that 5000 series. So we started to develop this 5000 series and started shipping it to the United States. Well, about 4, 5, 6 months ago, I think it was one of our senators, Mr. Hatch, out of the West, decided that he wanted to protect the aluminum industry in the United States a little bit more, and he said, we're going to consider pulling that 5000 series under this anti-dumping. So we'll know October 7th whether or not we're going to be able to go back into China with that new alloy. it'll still only be 25% of what they were doing before. So, but it would be great to get back into China and bring those products back, just really because of their quality. So quick, where do you think America ranks on the list of aluminum producers in the world? You think we're number one? You think we're number two? Russia consumes the majority of that. I walked in here and forgot my numbers on it. 43 million metric tons of total annual production, and of that, China has almost 50% of that market. Our market is very volatile over the last year. What we find is on the London Metal Exchange, when you saw all of the gyrations in the stock market over the last few months, all right, really in the last few weeks, you wonder, well, where do these guys go when they cash out of this market? Where do they go into our market? They go into our commodities and they start playing. It's got nothing to do with supply and demand. All they do is screw us up. So what they've done now is our prices dropped from April through 3 weeks ago. Our prices dropped about, if a pound of aluminum, a pound of ingot is about 80 cents a pound, all right? It was $1.10 a pound 4 months ago. So these guys took their money out of our market, ran into the commodities market, or into the equities market, ran the stock market up. Now they've crashed that, and now they're bailing back into our market. So we're seeing our prices for the last 2 weeks while the stock market was going down. Now I don't know that that's I wouldn't invest on that. But it's something I've seen for 20 years, that it's a game. They run it down over here, bring it up over there, and it's just, so the United States actually has become less, as with everything, they've become less and less of that manufacturing base. We see more of that service base here in the United States. I'm service based. I'm a trader. People look at me and they like, what are you doing? How come you're not, why are you taking business away from her? If I don't, import, people have been traders forever. And so it's a great opportunity. I looked at it as a great opportunity. I wanted to see the world and I've done it. I'm not done yet. Celebrated my 57th birthday on Sunday, and I hope I've got another 50 to go. So this brings us back to FAU. What a stadium. What a beautiful campus. It's to see what has happened to FAU over the last 20 years is just nothing short of amazing. And so I thank all of you for listening to me talk about my experiences since I left FAU. I've been very blessed. My health, my family, and I hope to be able to sell my business within the next 5 to 10 years. I'd like to get between $10 and $15 million, buy a little piece of land over here on the ocean, and come back and talk to the next group of people. So that's, do we have any questions? Anybody have any questions that they might ask about the traveling in the world or the aluminum market? Good. That means go right ahead.
What would be the best advice you would give someone to try to put their foot in the door to try to gain position, how you kind of gain a position yourself in like the aluminum market? Like, what would be an advice to try to get your foot in the door into a market?
If you look at what I just talked about, I started corporate. All right? I went to work for corporate. That's where you cut your teeth and they pay for your traveling. All right? I learned everything on that side. And then find the right investor, or you've been blessed enough. When I sold out with Hugovens and they bought my annual contract out and I moved to Florida, that funded my startup on my business. And then so to get your foot in the door on any of these industries, that's my suggestion. You go corporate, learn the industry before you do it on your own. Once you've learned it, make sure it's profitable, because some of these companies, you look at them and you think, oh my God, these guys are doing great, and there's nothing on the bottom. It's all a facade. They're just trying to bump up their sales to sell their business and cash out, and the next guy walks in and he's like, what happened here? So, have a good attorney, write good contracts, all right? You can't, stress enough the value of an attorney. Move to New York, and you'll really find out the value of an attorney. Yeah, yeah. Any others? Yes, ma'am.
I know that some Caribbean islands have bauxite,
Yes.
but they haven't been featured. I mean, what do you think that prevents those countries from, like producing more or like becoming bigger players in the market?
Storms. Storms. They sit in the hurricane alley. And so when you have mining, and you're mining the bauxite out of the ground, you don't care if it rains and the wind blows. But if you have a factory there that's making rolled products or extruded products, hurricane takes out the factory. I had a competitor of mine in the Dominican last week got wiped out. All right, so that is the main reason. The large Rio Tintos and the large mining companies of the world are in that country. And they're not going to put any downstream. Now they might, even then, question, what do you think is the most expensive part of creating aluminum?
Mining energy.
Electricity. Correct. That is correct. 70% of the cost of aluminum is electricity. Because when they put that alumina, they take that bauxite, refine it into the alumina. 2 pounds of alumina makes 1 pound of aluminum once they electrify it. Yes, sir.
Have you been able to get into the Eastern European countries like Czech, Poland, Romania?
Yes. We did some cold rolled aluminum that came out of those regions. All right. What I find is that they're working with very old, what we had found is the factories were old. All right. Their costs were very high. All right. The key is the sourcing of the raw materials. That's why we've seen a big shift over the last 20 years from what used to be in South America. You used to have a lot of hydropower. And that's where they went to, this big aluminum industry down there. And the last few people that have run those countries down there basically destroyed those industries down there. And so now the shift was to the Middle East, because the Middle East has got an abundant supply of gas and oil to be able to produce the electricity to produce that aluminum raw material. They don't have the raw material, but they ship it there, and then they produce the billet and the ingot that we ship then all over the world. Yes, sir.
Can you explain, since you've been to so many different countries and have been doing business with so many different, cultures, your experience with those cultures and how you found them to work with?
One of the best things I did here at FAU, part of the curriculum, I think, is it Letitia Baldridge, the writer of ethics, business ethics? There was a book this thick that I was given one year here at FAU. And it was like, read this. And basically it's common sense stuff when you're going there and you learn, but you should read up a little bit. You don't want to go there. You do not want to go to China. Okay, sit down at the table with the owner of the factory. They got these roundabouts in the middle of the tables. Everybody sits at these round tables. And when they bring that food out there, all right, they put that plate up on that roundabout and they spin that plate over in front of you. And I don't care what's on that plate, you better eat it. Yeah. Have you ever had is it sea cucumber? Yeah. That's as bad as it gets. That's as bad as it gets. And we've also been blessed, though, by having English. I didn't study any language. I'm not fluent in any other languages. All right, I know a little bit about a little bit of everything, kind of a thing. But the international language is English. Conversation, the Russians, the Germans, the Belgians, it went to English. They have sent their kids that are the interpreters for the owners. They speak English at these meetings. And so I found Mexico was a little hard, but once you understand, no problem. Then you know where you're at there. Anyway, yes, sir.
So as I understand, you don't own production facilities in these countries.
No.
So you're just a trader. So my question to you is, you've been to to all these different countries, and first of all, how do you pick where to go next? Is it the factory prices? Is it labor costs? Is it electricity? And the second question is, what does it take to be a good trader? I guess how do you make money out of this, and why did you travel? Why did you move from one place to the other so much?
I saw how much money they were making. I was in Russia. Have you ever heard of transfer pricing?
Right.
Transfer pricing is where you take the pricing and put it in an island, all right, to where basically I was a sales agent in the United States. I bought it from that island, and then that island, Russia sold it to that island. So Russia, in transfer pricing, I can only make money to cover my sales expenses in the United States. That's part of the transfer, and you got to have attorneys that have the book for you, and you follow this thing like the Bible, or they come storming in. So Russia would sell it to the island for 50 cents a pound, and then the island would sell it to me at $1 a pound, then I would sell it to the U.S. customer for $1.10 a pound.
Arbitrage.
And so when you are producing 50 million pounds a year, do the math on that one. And that was just one factory that we had in Russia. And so I thought, wow, these guys, they're coining this stuff, right? And then after I started seeing people get killed, I thought, well, maybe we won't go here. And so I went to, I stay current, all right, whether it is the American metal market, I read the articles on the London Metal Exchange website, all right, because and then I watch what countries are shipping, all right? And so I saw Vietnam coming up. So I went to Vietnam, home run. Now I'm seeing South Korea, if they can avoid, an all-out war, that South Korea is, the manufacturing that's coming out of there is just gorgeous. So I throw a backpack on my back, all right? I tone it down, all right? I don't come cruising through the airport at 6'2". Here comes the American, I try to blend into the culture, be as friendly as I can when I'm there, and I found it to be a success. And so how I ever became a trader, I don't know. I mean, it was, I worked for wholesale distribution and I was in management. But once that opportunity, when I saw owning your own company, it's just like anything. You buy it for this much, you sell it for that much, and you hope to make that much at the end of the day.
So shopping the world, basically.
You shop the world. You shop the world. My U.S. manufacturers don't care for that, but I do. Did you have a question?
Yeah, so on that note, is it a bit disconcerting doing your business being in the United States and trusting partners all over the world?
You have to trust. You have to choose. You don't always win. I mean, I wrote 3 years ago, I wrote a 20-year contract with Mexico, all right? And my mistake was I allowed them to invoice my customers directly, so I didn't have to carry the money, all right? Because we had a 20-year contract. Not 3 months after we signed that 20-year contract, they contacted every one of my customers and went direct. And they said, sue us. So to sue another country, you're not in small claims court. You're in federal court. You better have about $25,000 to $50,000 to pop down on the table right there to start. And then you have to put a restraining order against all your customers. How many customers do you think are going to buy from you now? So it really comes down to, and I thought I had the trust. I'd gotten to know the family. We went to bullfights. I was in, right? Didn't work. Didn't work. I find, and I don't think it's the Mexicans per se or the Chinese per se. It's just they saw a way of cutting me out of 10% of the margin and went direct. Now, they've floundered. You have to have that strong U.S. presence, all right? I don't care who they think they are over there, all right? Because if they don't have me that knows the customers, that knows the product, and understands the importance of the quality and the on-time performance, all right, they came into the market, dumped their prices, within 6 months they were out. But it was no problem. Yes, sir?
How do you see currency playing into this type of trading market?
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Yeah, if we don't, I lock my prices at time of purchase. All right, the people that the producers and the billet traders are the ones that really play in the currencies market. I mean, if I don't follow that market, I'm pretty good at the LME. You know, I can outguess most of the market on what's going to happen with aluminum ingot right now. So we're sitting in a position right now where I'm scooping up as many production orders as I can, because we lock our prices based on the prior month's average that was traded on the LME. So if it climbs all of September, I'm still locking over here at these prices. And so right now we're just scooping up orders because our market has been climbing for the last 2 weeks.
You lock something like a forward contract?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Depending on, and we do it per customer. Some customers don't want to go there, and it's usually they'll do a blend. The customers will do a blend. They'll do spot buys with a fixed buy, and then that way you don't get killed. Because if you try to be a hero, you can become a goat real fast. We watched at the end of 2008. My partner at that time calls me up and he goes, "How many pounds can we buy?" And I called up the Chinese mill and I said, "What's my credit line?" They go, "You got 2 million pounds you could buy." I called my partner back. He goes, "Buy it." So I got in there at $1.04. 90 days later, it was at 64 cents a pound. My partner lost $400,000 in 90 days. But it was his money. Yes?
How does the aluminum is transported in big amounts, I suppose?
Yeah.
What portion of the cost is the freight?
5%. 5 to 10%. We take the aluminum extrusions and like these shapes, and inside of these, the cargo, the large ships, you ever see they put the big containers on the ships, all right? Well, we have developed these systems to where we build these steel trolleys. The manufacturers put our extrusions onto these trolleys, slide them into the containers, 40, 45-foot high cube containers, put them onto usually a feeder vessel out of Vietnam, will then go to Singapore. That's where the big port is there, and then from Singapore to the East Coast USA. And yeah, it varies. It's anywhere between 5 and 10. That is one of the keys to the success of being a trader, is you've got to be able to get it here. You've got to be able to get it here because you're competing against the domestic mills, and they've got all of the government helping them in every way that they can to keep guys like us, from being able to take business. And so what I found in the past was I always had to be about 5 to 10% cheaper because I was an importer. Well, today I find that when they try that story with me, I say, look at the quality. You're getting crap out of this U.S. mill, and I'm going to give you this, and I'm going to save you 5% instead of 10%. Now, what do you want to do? The guy's grabbing the metal. All right, so that's sort of going away. That 15, 20 years ago when I first got into the business, the flag waving was crazy. I would walk in with a German product, and they're like, we only buy from America. There's very few of those people left anymore because those that didn't survive. I mean, it's a world market. Yes, sir.
What do you think about presidential candidates on the GOP side like Trump and a whole bunch of them with the rhetoric with, buying overseas products that should be made in the U.S.?
I don't think you'll see Trump stopping imports. All right. There are some others that might. I know that we've got everybody in here. Some people are Democrats, some people are Republicans. So I really try to avoid politics in my discussions. I have my views. All right. I'm rooting for some people that I hope will help my industry. I mean, when the Commerce Department comes in and shuts down China, and then the U.S. manufacturers cannot get those products from U.S. manufacturers, what did they do? Cost you money. Because now, instead of buying those extrusions that build that shower door enclosure in your bathroom, costing $15, now it's $30. And so things like that, bad political decisions can really affect consumer pricing. Give you an example: the beverage can business. All right, we have large banks. Goldman Sachs decided they were going to corner the aluminum market. They did is they went into Detroit and they rented every warehouse. This was 3 years ago. They rented every warehouse they could get in Detroit. And then they started to buy up all the aluminum in the United States that they could buy, and they put it into these warehouses. And then, once they had 30% of the market in these warehouses of the domestic US consumption, they reduced how fast they would let it ship out. So all of a sudden, prices went from 60 cents a pound to $1 a pound because there was this full sense of supply and demand in the market, all right? And then they just pulled the plug on that. The government did not find that they did any. They found the loophole. But the government said, we're going to close the loophole, so you need to stop this. Soon as they stopped that, 3 months ago, price of aluminum dropped 30 cents a pound. But they cashed out. So we can really be influenced badly in my market by big players like that. You know, right now, China, you don't know what numbers are real coming out of China as far as what they're producing, what their actual production is, what is there. Everything is a fantasy, I think, that's coming out of that country right now. They have dumped, so you saw in that one graph, they have dumped so much aluminum into the world market right now that we are approaching the level, the prices have dropped to the point to where now we're at a point to where you can't produce it for what it's selling for. So now domestically, they'll start to shut down smelters to swallow up all of this excess. So yeah, it can be a brutal place, the world market. Yes, sir.
I'm wondering, is the aluminum trading market just another trading market, or do you think that the skills that you've developed over time while doing this can be transferred?
Oh, I think I could apply it to steel, plastics, you know.
Have you ever considered doing that?
No, because I found the aluminum market to be so dynamic, all right? And there were so many products. They weren't running away from aluminum, they were running towards it. You know, it was like steel. They were running away from steel, all right? And so I thought, hey, you know, first I went from steel to stainless steel at US Steel, and I thought, hey, this is nice, you know? But then, as imports started to come in from South Africa, as imports started to come in from Japan on the steel market, all right, US Steel sells off all of their distribution units, and 26 distribution units got shut down, all right? And so, and this is back in the 80s. And so it's, I find that you could do that in petroleum. Yeah, you could, I think it's very transferable. But you know, I've been blessed. The aluminum market's been anything. I had a guy in Sumatra that wanted me to do coffee. And I thought, that sounds pretty good. Until I found out that, you know, I looked into the regulations for shipping coffee. Forget it. Try to get that product into the United States. Yes, sir.
For your job as a trader, you need to do a follow-up of the production to guarantee the delivery, everything, or you just work in the commercial area buying and selling the product?
No. I work with manufacturers here in the United States. And my manufacturers, they don't want to carry any inventory. All right? They want my stuff there on time. If I'm late, I stop their production line. Now, my advice to them is, you know, I can't control hurricanes. All right? I just had a ship. I just lost 2 containers on a typhoon. Lost them. Gone. $80,000 each container. We have insurance. All right? But the typhoon took the containers off the ship. All right? And so it's very difficult to control all of those variables. Yes, sir.
So as a trader in an organizational sense, how many personnel do you actually have in your organization?
There's 3 of us. And we will develop a $10 million business within the next 3 years.
Are you guys all partners? Or?
That's top secret. 2 of us are. 2 of us are. Yeah, when you've worked as long as I have, and you actually finally find that great partner. All right, Tim was a graduate, like I had said, of FAU. Probably one of the best human beings I've ever met in my life. You know, Tim sold out his business and did really well. In fact, I saw his name on the front of the stadium over here on one of the banners, Tim O'Connor. So when you find that great partner, hang on. Hang on. Yes, sir.
Just a financial question. What's your margins on this business? It sounds like you've got pretty high margins.
Are you looking to get into this business? Or no, it's very, we work 5%, but the volume's the key. The volume's the key. If you can do 10 million pounds at 5%, you know, you do the math, it's a nice number. Yes. Anyone else?
Why is China so big?
You go to China. I've never seen anything like it in my life. I thought New York was big. I thought Chicago was big. I land in Hong Kong, and I'm like, wow, this is big, right? Then I get on a train, and I'm heading north out of Hong Kong, and the first city I hit has got 18 million people. 1 hour up the road is another city with another 18 million people. So within a matter of, you know, I got 50, 60 million people within an hour. And so housing, windows, doors, all aluminum. And China subsidized their markets for many, many years. That's how they got in. That's why they got in trouble with the U.S. Commerce Department. They went into window manufacturers in Iowa, you know, at 50 cents a pound, and the U.S. guys are at $1, and they're like, how are you doing that? You know, because the government was subsidizing their production. And so that doesn't last forever. That doesn't last forever. You know, but the thing, the big difference that I saw, and this actually happened to me when I went over there the one time, they take about 3 weeks off each year in February for Chinese New Year, all right? Well, in the United States, if we're gonna have a layoff, all right, there's postings and, you know, and people get unemployment. Not in China, man. They threw a chain on that gate. When they came back from Chinese New Year, the factory was bolted shut. And you got nowhere to go but back to the fields. So I think that eventually these things, just like with the United States, when you look and you saw our factories were booming back in the 40s and the 50s, all right, and then you get we start thinking a little bit about the environment, you know, they're not there yet. I have stood in Guangdong province at 12 noon and barely been able to see the sun. And then suffered with problems breathing for another 3 weeks after I got home. So now, you know, I always thought, oh, you can't wear your mask over there. That's offensive. I wear it everywhere I go now when I'm in that region.